What is going on, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS4 tutorial. So this tutorial is actually a collaboration video between me and XCX Solutions. So I'll be doing the first half of this video, he'll be doing the second half. So in the last videos that we've put out on our channels, we showed you guys how to go ahead and download games from the internet and get them running on your 1.76 PS4 without having the original disc. Now in this video, what we're going to do is a bit different. We're going to take a game that you actually have on disk and back it up so that you can run it from the hard drive without the disk needing to be in. And other things you can do with this, of course, is go ahead and upload it for other people to download, or send the game to a friend who doesn't have the disc, or your friend could do this and send you a game that he has on disc so that you can run it without the disc on your PS4. So how to decrypt the games. So in order to do this, we need to decrypt some of the game files, like the game's executable files, and we also need to basically dump all the game files to the computer, and that is what I'm going to be showing you. And then XCX Solutions will show you how to then get it running as a backup on a 1.76 PS4. So what I'll do is I'll back up this game and show you guys how to do it. I'm going to do Watch Dogs as an example because it's quite a small game, and then I will send that to XCX Solutions and he will show you guys him being able to run it on his console without the disc. So first things first, if we head over to the computer here, you can see that we have got some things that you're going to need here. You're going to need the dump file by CTIRT176 backup. So this is the source to create a bin payload which will decrypt and dump the game files to a USB stick. You're going to need FileZilla or WinSCP. You're going to need VirtualBox, and of course for being able to run the backed up games, you're going to need one of the loaders, and then obviously you're going to need something to inject bin and elf payloads. I particularly recommend using PS4 AIO because I've updated that tool to now include a listener as well, so you can do everything within that tool instead of having to have different tools for those different things. So yeah, first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to hop on to VirtualBox and we're going to load up our virtual machine running Ubuntu in order to essentially build our payload. So we're going to need to build a .bin payload on here. So you're going to need the PS4 SDK set up in a Linux environment. I've already done a video on this. I'll link it in the cards in the top right hand corner of the screen, and I'll also link it in the description and probably at the end of the video as well. So yeah, if you haven't watched that video yet, watch it. It shows you how to get the PS4 SDK set up on Linux so that you can build .bin payloads. So that is what we're going to be using in this video. So okay, so what you need to do is transfer this zip file, which is the source for building our payload, and we're going to need to transfer that over to our virtual machine. So because drag and drop's not working for me, I'm just going to use a peer-to-peer transfer using Just Beam It. So I'll create a link here, copy this link, and just go to the web browser in my virtual machine and basically paste the link in and download it. There we go. So I'm going to save file. Make sure you download the one from the description, because the one in the description will be a zip file, and I think the original one is a 7-zip file, and Ubuntu doesn't recognize that. It can't extract 7-zip files, so download the one in the description, which is just a zip file, and then extract it to the desktop. Alright, so once we have it on the desktop, we're going to go into this folder, we're going to go into the source folder, and then we're going to double click on the main.c, which should open it in gedit, and then we're going to scroll right down to the bottom of the file, and we've got this here. So this is the function that actually decrypts and dumps the file. So you can see it's taking a file and then it's exporting it to a USB. It's exporting it to USB 0. So this is the game ID. So we need to change the IDs right here to the ID of the game that you want to dump. So in my case, I'm dumping Watch Dogs, so I need to put in the ID for Watch Dogs. So the ID, you'll find it on the actual case of your game, the game case. At the bottom of the spine of the case, there'll be a ID, CUSA, and then a number. It's also on the disk itself as well. You can find it on the disk. So in my case, the one for Watch Dogs is CUSA 00016, which I'm going to pop in here. Now, bear in mind that I have the European version of Watch Dogs, so the US version will have a different ID, the Japanese version will have a different ID, so bear that in mind. So I'm just going to go ahead and now copy this ID into all of these lines. Now it's likely that not all of these files will exist, but it's just covering them all so that if any of them do exist, it will decrypt and dump them. So usually there's only about 4 or 5 files it actually has to decrypt and dump, but depending on the game that you're doing, there might be more. So just go ahead, put in the IDs and save. Click the save button or Control S to save. And then once you've done that, you can back out of this folder, and in the folder where the make file is, you want to right click, open in terminal, and then type in make, and that should build the .bin payload. Now if you get an error while trying to build it, then it's probably because you don't have the SDK set up. So please watch the video that I mentioned before where I've got a full video on setting up the SDK to build .bin payloads. So follow that video if you're having any issues building the payload. I'm going to right click and rename this to Watch Dogs dump, because this payload is specific to Watch Dogs. It will only work on Watch Dogs unless I change the ID and build another one, and then that will work for a different game. So from this point, I believe my drag and drop does work from virtual machine to physical machine. Yep, there we go. So I'm copying it over to my physical machine, and now we need to inject the payload. So to inject the payload, I'm going to use PS4 AIO. Again, you can use, Netcat GUI or Netcat, but it's up to you. I recommend this though because you can do everything within this. So you can inject the payload, you can listen, and you can inject alpha or bin payloads. So it's up to you. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select custom, and then grab our payload that we made and drag it in here. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and make sure the port is entered as 9023. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and, so on the PS4 here, what we're going to do is head, of course, to one of the WebKit playgrounds. So f-x.fr/ps4/. And then in the code execution, you're going to click go and wait for it to say waiting for payload. Now, here's the thing, you don't want to inject the payload yet. You do not want to inject the payload, because if you inject the payload before you run the game, then it's not going to be able to decrypt the files. Also, what you don't want to do is run the game and then try and load the code execution, because it will just give you out of memory errors once a game is running. So you need to do it in this exact way. You need to start the code execution before you run the game and wait for it to say waiting for payload. Do not inject the payload, just press the PS4 middle button to back out of the internet browser, so you've just minimized it, it's still running in the background, and then start the game. Okay, so now what you want to do is plug in your USB stick. So make sure the USB stick is either FAT32 or exFAT, preferably exFAT. So if you go to properties on your USB stick, you can see mine's exFAT or exFAT. That is the ideal file system. So right click, format it if it's not already on exFAT, and select exFAT. If you don't have the option for exFAT in this drop down list, then just select FAT32, which will be your other option, which should also work as FAT32. Just make sure it's not something like NTFS. Alright, so once you've got that, you want to unplug your USB stick, plug it into the PS4, making sure you plug it into the right USB stick. So the USB stick on the right, not the one closest to the disk drive. So make sure you plug it into the right slot. And then once you've done that, you can then go ahead, if we load up PS4 AIO, we can now go ahead and inject our payload, and it says done. Also, by the way, you need to enter the PS4's IP address first in the bottom right here, and then when you inject, it will send it to that IP address. So there we go, we've injected it, it says done. So what you need to do is wait. Don't unplug the USB stick immediately. I would say wait between 10 or 15 minutes because it does take a while for it to decrypt and dump the files. Okay, so that is a success, as you can see right here. So after leaving it for 10 minutes, it has done all the files. So we've got the eboot.bin, we've got this libc, libsce, and write.sprx. Those files might seem familiar to you if you've watched the other videos. So just to check, you can open it up in a hex editor and just make sure that the bottom of the file should have a path in here. And if it does, then that means it has, you know, fully decrypted the whole file right down to the end, which is what you want. And usually, you know, this should be around 941, that should be 391, that should be 48, thereabouts. So yeah, I can tell that this has properly done it and decrypted all the files. Okay, so from this point now, we're going to shut down and restart our PS4. Okay, so now that we've got the decrypted files, we need to go ahead and get the actual game files. Now we can't just go ahead and inject the FTP payload and grab them off the disk because it's in a package file and we can't decrypt package files yet or extract them. So we need to get the actual game files themselves, and in order to do that, again, the game needs to be running. So we need to do the same thing we did last time. Start the code execution, inject the payload once the game has already started, which means that we cannot use the FTP payload that's built in here in this version of the WebKit Playground, because this will automatically execute the payload, and we don't want that. We want to execute the payload once the game is running. So we're going to go to the code execution, we're going to click go. It's going to say waiting for payload, so we press the middle button, start the game, and wait until the game gets to the main menu. I wouldn't recommend connecting straight away because I have tried to connect it while the game was still loading up, and I've had issues where the game has frozen on me before because of that. So I recommend waiting until you're actually getting to the main menu of the game. Okay, so here we go. So as you can see here, we're in the main menu for Watch Dogs. So we can go ahead and inject the payload now. So I'm going to open up PS4 AIO. Just going to replace our Watch Dogs dump payload, and instead I'm going to uncheck the custom box and select FTP plus fully enabled debug settings and change IP payload. Make sure you select that, and then what you want to do is click inject payload, and that should have worked. So all we need to do now is open up our FTP client. We're going to click on the site manager, create a new site, call it PS4, put in your PS4's IP address into the host, put 1337 as the port number, put the login type on anonymous, and then click OK. And then from there you can connect your PS4 by selecting the PS4 from the drop down list. So there we go, we are connected to the PS4 while the game is running. So what we can do now is go into the MNT folder, and then you don't want to go into disk because disk just contains the actual package file for the game that we can't extract. We want to go into the sandbox directory, and as you can see there's a bunch of files in here. If the game wasn't currently running, there would be nothing in here, or not the files that we're looking for anyway. So then what you want to do is you want to go into this folder at the bottom here called PSFMNT. Go in there, and then you'll see this folder with the game ID -app0. This is where all of the game files are located on the disk. I believe they're probably running from the hard drive because they're probably running from the hard drive right now, not from the disk. But they're loaded in here. So all you want to do is take this folder and just drag it somewhere onto your computer. So for me, I created a folder in my downloads called Watch Dogs Extracted, and all I'm going to do is just drag this folder into there, and boom, so there it is, and it's starting to copy all of the files across. This might take a long time because I noticed that the FTP transfer goes a lot slower when the game is running compared to when the game's not running. So I'm downloading at a much slower pace than normal. So this could take a very long time. It could take multiple hours depending on the size of the game. So I guess just be patient and wait for it to transfer across, and I'll be back with you guys once it has finished. Okay, so that is it copied over now. As you can see, I've got the entire game. If I go ahead and do properties, you can see it's around about 20 gigs, which is the normal size for Watch Dogs. So I've got all the files for Watch Dogs copied over, as you can see. And now what we need to do is we need to basically go to, we go back here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder in here. And I'm going to call this folder the same name as our extracted folder, but I'm going to do -crack instead. So in this folder, I'm going to put my decrypted game files for Watch Dogs. So I'm going to copy them in here, and voila. So this looks very familiar now, just like the downloads. This is basically like the same as the downloads that you would get from like Knights of the Fallen now, where you have the game, the extracted game, and the decrypted files. So I'm just going to right click and add this to an archive in WinRAR, and then I'm going to put the compression on best to try and, you know, minimize the file size a bit. And then I'm also going to split this into 200 megabyte parts. I'm using WinRAR for this, so I'm going to split this into 200 megabyte volumes. So then when I create this and I click OK, it's going to basically create multiple parts. That way it's easier for me to upload them in parts rather than trying to upload one massive 20 gigabyte file at once. Like what if the internet cuts out halfway through? I have to start all over again. So instead of that, I can upload them in 200 megabyte parts until they're all uploaded, and then I can just send the download links of those parts to XCX Solutions and he can go ahead and download them. As you can see, part 1, part 2. Okay, so that's basically it. So once it's finished compressing them into all these different parts, I'm going to go ahead and upload them and send the links to XCX Solutions, and from there it is over to him.
Okay guys, I have now received the download from Modded Warfare. All we want to do now is simply extract all of the archives. So to do that, simply go up to part 1, right click it, extract files, and choose your desired location, hit OK, and it will extract every single part into one folder. Now that we have the folder, we can go inside of here and you'll see two other directories, one ending in app0 and the other ending in crack. The app0 is basically the full game, and the crack folder contains the decrypted files. So once you've extracted everything, all we're going to want to do now is head over to our PlayStation and open up the internet browser. Simply head over to a WebKit playground of your choice. I am using f-x.fr, but you can use whichever WebKit playground of your choice. Simply go over to the FTP server and debug settings and go ahead and hit on launch FTP. Once it's been initialized, all we're going to want to do now is open a FTP client of your choice. For this tutorial, I am using FileZilla, so I'm going to open that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to connect to our PlayStation 4. So simply type in the IP address of your PlayStation 4, leave the username and password boxes blank, and for the port we're going to be using port 1337. Click on quick connect and you'll see we now have the directory shown. What we're going to be looking for is the data directory, so simply go inside of here, and you may or may not have some directories in here, but if you don't, that's completely normal. Now the disk I am using is Grand Theft Auto 5, the European version, so what I'm going to be doing is creating a directory called CUSA00411. If you're using a different game, be sure to get the title ID of that game and simply create a new folder and find out what your game title ID is and simply name it that. What we now want to do is head over to our game files and simply go inside of the app0 folder, simply drag and drop all of those into the desired folder we created. So now what we're going to do is we're simply going to open the crack directory and we're going to be placing the decrypted files into the location of the game. So the two PRX files go inside of SCE module, and if it asks to overwrite, simply click always use this action and hit OK. And for write.sprx, go inside of SCE sys about and simply copy and replace that. And for the eboot.bin, obviously is in the root, so drag and drop eboot.bin, and now we've replaced all of the files with the decrypted ones. The next thing we're going to want to do is simply run the ELF loader. Now I am going to be using it locally, but you can use it through the WebKit playground if that works for you, but for me it doesn't and I have a lot of trouble, so for me local works best. All you're going to want to do is install Node.js and simply go over to this directory. All the links will be in the description below, so be sure to download everything there. here, type in cmd, hit space and hit enter. What this does is it opens command prompt in the directory you are currently in. To load it, all we're going to want to do is type in node space server.js and hit enter, and you can see it says servant directory on port 5350. So if we head over to our console, we can go up to the top URL and delete everything we have in there. Type in http:// and then the local IP address from where you're hosting the ELF loader. For me, mine ends in 0.26 and then obviously 5350 for the port. Once we now have executed the ELF loader and we're now on stage 5, as you can see in the top URL, we're now going to execute the payload. So to do this, we're going to open PS4 AIO tool. This is linked in the description below along with everything else. So again, be sure to download everything if you do not have it. I am using GTA 5 as I said earlier in the video. So now what I'm going to do on the tool is simply press custom and drag and drop our payload into the box like so. Click on inject payload and it should say done once it's been done. And to know that it's been initialized, if we change this box to 5088 and click on listen, you can now see that we're listening to our PlayStation 4 console on port 5088, and we can now see that the plugin has been fully initialized and you should see it started successfully. So back over to our PlayStation 4, we're going to hit on the middle button, make sure you do this and not press circle. So now I'm going to try and load the disc of GTA 5. As you can see, it's going to try and load it, and there we go, it swaps directly to Watch Dogs, and now we have Watch Dogs running on our PlayStation 4 176 console. If we switch over to the log, you can see as well all of the data on the screen is being fetched straight through PS4 AIO tool, so that's pretty cool indeed. You can see basically everything going on, all of the scripts and all of the different ELF files loading. Pretty cool indeed in real time. So I hope that's helped in a way. Comment, rate, subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.